Fault finding on a network can be a very tricky subject, as there are so many parameters that need to be considered. Has a successful connection been made to the network via cable or wireless connection? Has the correct IP address been assigned? If it has, then has the correct class been allocated? Has the correct name of the network been chosen? Has sharing been enabled? Just to name a few. To answer these questions, we need to go back to basics, and that's our intentions here. During this task, you will discover different methods on how to check network connectivity. Some may seem quicker than others, and you will eventually develop your own technique to access these parameters. Here we shall connect 3 hosts together through Homegroup, a very simple method that can be used to share data, printers and other resources between a private network. The following is assumed that you are using 3 PCs with Ethernet cards installed, or you can use VirtualBox, and that the hosts have been installed and that the advanced sharing has not been enabled. First, configure the Windows 10 host. Highlight Windows 10 host, then click on Settings, Network. Enable Network Adapter, then click on the selector to the right of Attach To, and change this to Internal Network. Click on Advanced and remove the tick in Cable Connected by clicking into it, to simulate that it has not been connected to any network. Click on OK. Start Windows 10. When Windows start, we shall see a red cross over the network icon. This can be expected since the network cable has been disconnected. To check the IP address, we click on Start, All Apps. Scroll down until you find Windows System, then click on the selector to the right of this. Click on Command Prompt. The command prompt is a very special way of communicating with the CPU. More about this later. All hosts on the network are required to have a unique Internet Protocol address or IP address. This is very much like a postal address that the postman would follow to find out where you live. If the address is wrong, then your post will never arrive. As with postal addresses, they can never be two the same in the same district. So here we wish to find the IP address of our host, or the IP address configuration. The command for this is simply ipconfig. So we enter at the command prompt ipconfig and then press the enter key. A message that will appear, media disconnected, which is what we expected. This time we shall type in ipconfig in lowercase. The command should have been successfully executed since it is not case sensitive. It is even possible to mix lower and upper cases, and this will also be accepted. This is true in Microsoft operating systems, but not always true for other operating systems, as we shall see later. When checking IP addresses, it is normally best to do this from the command prompt. We can see here why in our next example. Another way of checking the IP address is through the network properties. To close the command prompt, we enter the command exit. Once again, commands in Microsoft are not case sensitive. Click on Start, All Apps, Windows System, Control Panel, View Network and Status and Tasks, change adapter settings. Here we should find our adapter with a red cross against it, indicating a problem. This adapter could be wireless or wired. If we right-click on the adapter, we can find its properties. Here we have a whole list of different settings, and in some cases setting these parameters incorrectly could cause a host not to work on a network. But the 2 items that are currently important here are the Internet Protocol 4 and, if you scroll down, another parameter called Internet Protocol 6. The IPv4 will display the old addressing system and is slowly being replaced with IPv6. The difference is that the new system can access more addresses. We shall cover this topic in greater detail later in the coursework. However, IPv4 is still widely used, and so many systems still display the addressing system. If we double click on Internet Protocol 4, we can see that it can obtain an IP address automatically or use the following IP address. But there is nothing here that is telling us that there is a problem with the network, i.e. media is disconnected. There are other parameters that govern networking, such as sharing, some of which are automatic and others that need to be set manually. To check the advanced sharing setting, we can maneuver back to the Network and Sharing Center. Here we should find three basic profiles: private, guest or public, which is the current profile, and all networks. The default setting is guest or public profile. We can see that the network discovery and the printer sharing are both turned off. Therefore, this means even if the host was connected to a network, because the network discovery is turned off, it will not be able to share any of its resources. A practical example will be shown later. If we click on the selector to the right of private profile, it should expand. Here we shall have profiles set differently. This means when the host is connected through a private network, it will automatically seek out others that are sharing their resources, which are also on a private network. So what is the difference between private and public profile? We said earlier that the network host has to have a unique IP address, but the question is, who issues these IP addresses? Strangely enough, in the absence of a server which would normally give out IP addresses, the host creates one. In other words, it makes one up. This process is called APIPA, or Automatic Private IP Addressing. But it just can't take any address, it has to choose one from the special range. 169.254.0.1 to 169.254.255.254. If you're new to IP addresses, then this will not mean a great deal to you. However, to simplify this, we can think of this as how a postman would find an address. First, he would look at the street name. In our IP address, this is 169.254. So any IP address that have the same first two octets, as they are called, then they are on the same network, or in the case of our postman, down the same street. If the first two octets are 169.253, then the postman would have to go to a different street. Once he has located the street, all he needs next is the house number, and that is the last two octets. So it could be 0.1 or 10.10, or a house number 255.254. This system may seem complicated, but you will find after a period of time working with IP addresses is a very logical way of addressing hosts on any network, including the Internet, and hence why not only Microsoft have adopted them, but also many other popular operating systems. Just bear in mind that this was just a quick example. There are many other factors that we need to take in consideration when dealing with IP addresses. Let's not worry too much how these numbers reflect addresses right now, other than if the IP address falls between these numbers, then it is considered as private. Therefore, if it was a private network, then the first option, turn on the network discovery and turn on file and printer sharing, would occur. The third option here is Homegroup connections, which means that Windows will manage the Homegroup connections. We shall soon see how this is applied. Accessing this information is very similar in the other two operating systems. Let's check Windows 7 next. Before we check the IP address in the Windows 7 host, we should configure it within the virtual box. So highlight Windows 7 host, then click on Settings. Click on Network, enable Network Adapter, check and change Attached to Internal Network. In advance, untick Cable Select, then OK. Start Windows 7. Once again, a red cross will appear in the network adapter. To start the command prompt, we click on Start, All Programs, accessories, command prompts. When this appears, we enter the command ipconfig. As expected, the message media disconnected appears. To check the network properties, we type in exit to leave the command prompt, click on start, control panel, view network status and tasks, change adapter settings, right click on the adapter, then properties. Once again, we can see here very similar parameters, including the Internet Protocol IPv4 and Internet Protocol IPv6. If we highlight the Internet Protocol IPv4 and click on Properties, we shall find similar options as we did before. To check the advanced sharing settings, we click on Close, then Close, click on the back button, then on Change Advanced Sharing Settings. This tends to be slightly different, but has similar settings in the public profile, turn off network discovery, and turn off file and printer sharing. If we click on Home or Work Profile, we shall find it has one or two more parameters, and as default the printer sharing has been turned off. Don't worry too much at this stage at all the different settings, as a lot of them are automatic. We just need to be aware what happens when we share resources across the network. Finally, Windows 8. So within VirtualBox, highlight Windows 8 host, then click on Settings. Click on Network and Enable Network Adapter. In Advanced, untick Cable Select. Then OK. Start Windows 8. As expected, a red cross appears over Network Adapter when Windows starts. To check the IP address at the command prompt, we shall click on Start. Then on the downward arrow, scroll to the right to the command prompt, and then click on this. At the command prompt, we type in ipconfig. The message Media Disconnected appears. Now let's see what happens when we network all these hosts together privately. To do this, one of them will be nominated to become the first Homegroup host. In our example, it will be the Windows 10. But before we can do that, each host will need reconnecting to a network. Close all the windows on each host and shut them down. Connect each host back up using the Cable Connect option in VirtualBox. Now let's see what the IP address of the Windows 10 host is now. Click on Start, All Apps, scroll down until you find Windows System, then click on the selector to the right of this. Click on the command prompt. Type in ipconfig. Unlike before, we now have some parameters, an IPv6 and an IPv4 address. Rather than bogging ourselves down with both addressing systems, we shall just make a note of the IPv4 address. In our example, it is 169.254.171.117. Let's see if anything has changed in the network properties. So close the command prompt by typing in exit. From Start, All Apps, Windows System, Control Panel, View Network Status and Tasks, Change Adapter Setting. Notice there is no red cross appearing across the adapter, which means it has connectivity. Right click on the adapter, then on Properties. Double click on the Internet Protocol 4. Although now we have an IP address, it does not appear here, so we can see that finding an IP address using the command prompt is a much better technique. Now we shall set up a private network or home page on the Windows 10 host. So click on OK to close the Internet Protocol version 4 properties. Click on OK to close the Ethernet properties. Close the network connection window, and that will return us to the network and sharing center. At the bottom left hand side, where it is labelled See Also, you will find an option called Homegroup. Click on this now. Here we shall find the message to create or join a home group. Your computer network location must be set to private. If we recall, the location was set to guest or public. Also notice that create a home group has been greyed out. Because we are using a virtual operating system, the network will be unknown. It is neither guest and public or private, and therefore we shall have to switch this in a slightly different way than we would using real hosts. To see this effect, first click on Change Advanced Sharing Settings. Here we can see that the current profile is guest or public. Right-click on the network icon found on the taskbar, then click on Open Network and Sharing Center. Here we'll find the setting of the network, and in our example it is set to public. Notice it is described as Unidentified Network. Hold down the Windows key on the keyboard and press the R key just once. This is the Run option. Briefly, within all operating systems there are security policies that govern what the user can or cannot do. Here we shall call up the policy to change it. Once again, this is due to the way VirtualBox behaves. Type in setpol.msc, then press the Enter key. Here we have a list of security settings, and the one we wish to alter is within the Network List Manager. Double-click on this found in the left-hand pane, then click on the Unidentified Network found in the right-hand pane. As we can see here, the location type cannot be identified and so it's left as Not Configured. Since we want to change this to Private, click in the circle to the left of Private, then on OK. Close the Local Security Policy window, and now we should have returned to the Network and Sharing Center, and we should now find that the Unidentified Network has now been changed to Private Network. Once again, this action has only been taken due to the fact that we are using VirtualBox. If it was a standalone host, then we shall find under Ethernet a switch that will allow us to choose Private. On the bottom left of this window you should have the option to choose a home group, so click on this. You'll recall earlier we had a message here to create or join a home group. Your computer network location must be set to private. Now this no longer appears, and we can now have the option to choose Create a Home Group. A message will appear that within the next few screens a password will be generated, so click on Next. Here is a list of folders that are shared through Homegroup and can be accessed by any member that joins. Pictures, videos, music, documents, printers and devices. If we click on the selector to the right of Pictures, here you will have the option to share, which is currently selected, or not to share. Notice that documents by default are not shared, so will be hidden to any member on the network. Let's leave this by clicking on Next. A password will now be generated. Just below this is the Print Password and Instructions. Click on this now. Here we can see that we can print this password, or should we forget it, change it through the control panel. For the members to access this folder and files we have selected previously. Then they will need this password. Here we shall save it to a file. We double click on the password, it will become highlighted. Now if we right click on it, we can copy. To create on the desktop a new file called password, we right click anywhere on the desktop but not on an icon. Then click on New, then on Text Document. We shall change this to password and then open this file by double clicking on it. From Edit Paste, then from File, Save. Exit this document. The problem we have here is if a guest or someone has gained access to this computer and they see a file called password, then you may have just given them the permission to do anything with anything on your computer. In extreme example, even wipe your computer clean of its data. If this host was also on the internet, then this file could also be exposed as some worms or cookies that may read this file and return the information to a third party. Let's rename this file, so we right click on the file and then click on rename. Use the first letter from the following sentence. This is the password used for my home group. Type in TITPUFMH. Make this exactly as we can see it here with the capital T and H. This now will appear as a random file if saved to a different location on your computer. It would make it more difficult for anyone to find it. However, should you ever need it again, all you need to do is search for it. As an example, if we click on Search the Web and Windows found on the taskbar, type in the first few letters of the file name and it will soon be found very quickly. Double click on the search result and the original document will open. Close this document, then you should return to the View and Print Your Home Group Password window. Click on Cancel, then Finish. This then concludes the setting up of the home group. We shall now see the effect when a host logs on to this private network. When Windows 8 starts, click on the spyglass or search option normally found at the top right hand side corner of the desktop. As before, we have to run the secpol MSC and amend the security policy. Click on the Network List Manager policies, then double click on Unidentified Networks, set private, then click on OK. Close the Local Security Policy window. Click on Start, downward arrow, scroll to the right, then click on Control Panel. Click on Choose Homepage and Sharing Options. So here we can see that Vic Mackenzie on desktop NGCL74N has a home group available to share. Let's click on Join Now and you'll be prompted for the password. This was generated on Windows 10 host. Click on Next. Here you can see what's available within the home group. When you click on Next, you'll be asked for the password. Look back and check for the password you made a note of and enter this now. Click on Finish after the message "You have joined the home group" appears, then close all windows. Now we shall check access to the home page. Double click on File Explorer found on the taskbar and a window will open. Found in the left hand pane will be a folder called Home Group and another folder called Vic Mackenzie. Double click on this. So here are the network connections to the home group on Vic Mackenzie's computer. Anything that appears in these folders can be shared between the members. Now we should create a document within the home group folder called Pictures on Vic Mackenzie's home group. So we double click on the File Explorer found on the taskbar. Double click on the folder called Saved Pictures. Right click within the window, then from the drop down menu click on New, then Text Document. Change the name to Created on Windows 10 Homepage. Now we shall check back on the Windows 8 and the document should have appeared. We shall add a little bit of text to this file by double clicking on it and adding Altered by Janet. Then save. A window will appear and prompt you to save it back to the original location, which is on the home group host. Click on Save. You will then be prompted with "Do you wish to replace it?" So click on Yes. An Access is Denied message appears. So what has happened? Back on the home group host, click on Back, so we should be back at the home group window. Highlight the folder called Save Pictures, then from the toolbar in the Windows, click on Share. Let's just stop and think for a minute. Normally we can create, view, amend, save and delete a file. Each of these actions is referred to as having permissions or sharing. The degree that we set this at depends on what and why we are sharing. An example of this may be a health and safety document where everyone has to read it but is not allowed to edit or delete it. So the sharing for this would be set as View. Alternatively, this could be a file that requires the member to alter, like a timesheet that must be updated on a daily basis. So the sharing on this will be set as View and Edit. It is even possible to select specific people or members. This will allow them to view or edit. There are other complications that will become apparent later in the due course. For instance, if a member creates a folder within the home page, then the sharing will also need to be managed. So who will have the rights to do this? Once again, we shall answer this later in the coursework. In this task we are only concerned with the basic functions and concept of sharing. So we highlight the saved pictures, then from the toolbar select Home Group, View and Edit. Notice on the taskbar. Now when we return to Windows 8 and click on Save, there should be no errors. Back on the Home Group host, double click on the Save Pictures, then on Create on Windows 10 host document, and of course the document can now be amended. Let's see how Windows 7 deals with home groups. When Windows 7 has started, click on Start, Control Panel, choose Home Group and Sharing Options. At this point it may vary upon how you have set up your host. If the message to create or join a home group, your computer network location must be set to home, so you should click on what is network location, then click on Home Network. Otherwise, you will find that Vic Mackenzie has created a home group on the network. Click on Join Now. Here will inform you on what you want to share. Click on Next. Enter the password, then click on Finish. Close all windows. Click on the File Explorer found on the taskbar. Click on Vic Mackenzie, then Save Pictures, and finally on Created on Windows 10 host. And we can see how everyone on this home group can share their resources.